Good evening and welcome to this Tuesday, November 17th, 2020 meeting of the Raymore Planning and Zoning Commission. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll call roll, and let me remind commissioners, please make sure your microphone is lighted green and speak into the mic for the record. Commissioner Wiggins.
Present.
Commissioner Bowie. Commissioner Ackland.
Present.
Commissioner Fizer. Commissioner Peterman.
Present.
Commissioner Urquia.
Present.
Commissioner Manser.
Present.
Mayor Turnbow.
Present.
And Commissioner Faulkner is present. We do have a quorum this evening. No personal appearances. And we have one item on the consent agenda, approval of minutes from our October 20th, 2020 meeting. Unless any of the commissioners would like to take that off for discussion, I would entertain a motion to either accept the consent agenda or approve the minutes from October 20th, 2020, as you wish.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the October 20th, 2020 meeting.
Second.
Who did the second? Mayor Turnbow, thank you. All right, so we have a motion, hopefully I heard it right. Motion by Commissioner Urquia, second by Mayor Turnbow, to approve minutes of our October 20th, 2020 meeting. Does that sound right? Thank you. All those in favor, raise a hand, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. 7 in favor, none opposed, and no abstentions. Nothing this evening under unfinished business. That takes us to new business. Our first item is election of officers for the next 12 months. Our officers run from November of this year to the end of October of next year. And I would like to nominate Commissioner Wiggins to serve as chair, Commissioner Fizer to continue as vice chair, and Commissioner Peterman to serve as secretary. And I move that we elect that slate of officers to serve for the following 12 months. Mr. Zer, any concern?
Thank you, Chairman. I understand that you've made the nomination this evening for each of those individuals. Commissioner Fizer is not here. I don't have any reason to believe that she would not accept that nomination when she returns, as she indicated.
Right, Ms. Jardo?
Yes, she said that she would accept the nomination if nominated.
Very good. So with her nomination through Ms. Jardo, Commissioner Wiggins, would you be inclined to accept that nomination?
I would.
Commissioner Peterman, would you be inclined to accept that nomination?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you, Chairman. I apologize for interrupting.
No, that's...
Obviously, if there are more nominations to be made from the floor.
Absolutely, that's a fair question. So there's a motion, but no second yet.
I'll second it.
And second by Mayor Turnbow. Is there any discussion? All right, so the motion on the floor is to elect Commissioner Wiggins as chair, Commissioner Fizer as vice chair, and Commissioner Peterman as secretary for the next 12 months for the Raymore Planning and Zoning Commission. All those in favor, raise a hand, please. 6, 7. That's 7 in favor, and none opposed, no abstentions. Shall we switch places? Mr. Zer, that's appropriate, isn't it?
That would be appropriate at this time.
would, grab your.
Okay. Please bear with me. Okay.
So we're up to
All right, so now,
7B.
if there's no additional under item A, we will move to item B, the 2021 meeting calendar, which I would assume I would turn it over to city staff regarding that topic, please.
So the meeting calendar is for the 2021, can you hear me? Okay. So the meeting calendar is for the 2021 calendar year. It outlines the first and third Tuesdays of every month, which are our normal meeting times. And then it also has the submission deadlines, the publication notice, and the neighbor notice if needed. If any meetings were to be canceled for lack of application, we would notify you ahead of time, but this is the outlined schedule.
Are there any questions from the commission for staff regarding the calendar?
Do we need a formal motion to approve these?
As I say, if not, I would entertain a motion to accept.
I'll make a motion to accept the 2021 meeting calendar as presented by city staff.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to accept the 2021 calendar of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Motion made by Commissioner Arquilla, second by Commissioner Peterman. All those in favor, please raise your hand. I see 7 in favor, no opposed, and no abstentions. Was that correct, Mr. Zur? All right.
So
One-
far, so good. sir.
1 for 1, thank you. All right, moving right along. Next on our agenda is case 20022, the Community America Credit Union Site Plan. I would invite the applicant to please come forward and present your case. Or,
Staff report first.
are we doing staff report first? I'm sorry. Well, it's not a public hearing, right?
No, it is
No,
not.
okay, okay, I'm sorry, I had that backwards. All right, staff report, please, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Chair, just kidding.
It's all right, it's
Okay.
gonna take me a minute too.
Okay, thanks. This is the site plan approval for Community America Credit Union. The total tract is 1.029 acres. The existing uses to the north are residential duplexes, as well as professional office just to the immediate north. To the south it is, and east it's also commercial, and then to the west is PUD. The growth management plan and the future land use plan identify the areas appropriate for commercial development. The applicant is seeking to obtain site plan approval for a proposed 2,615 square foot credit union with 3-lane drive-up access in the rear for remote tellers. The building will include 27 parking spots, and 2 of those will be for handicap accessibility. Some previous actions on the property. The property was rezoned to C2 in 1993, and the 2 existing Willow Wind shopping centers on the property to the rear and then also to the east are located within, the signs for those are located within recorded sign easements and do not count toward this property's maximum number of signs. The drive-through access to the east and then the drive-through lane that's sort of in the middle of the property are part of recorded sign or recorded parking and drive easements that are recorded with the county already. The Engineering Division of Public Works has reviewed the application and determined that it complies with all the code requirements. The minimum parking for this use is identified as 1 per 200 square feet, and they have 27 parking spaces, and 2 of those are ADA compliant, so they are compliant with the minimum parking standards. The existing trees along the west side, which is Peace Drive, will be preserved except for 2 that will be removed to allow for a curb cut into the, to create a driveway access into the lot and then all the way into Willow Wind as well. There will also be a minimum 6-foot landscape area provided along all street frontages. In regards to pedestrian access, a 5-foot sidewalk is required to be installed along Peace Drive, as well as there's one along Highway 58, and there will be provided access from that sidewalk along 58 into the main entrance of the site. They are going over a drainage easement, so they are providing a grate to go over that. Okay. Staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission accept the staff proposed findings of fact and approve case 20022 Community America site plan, subject to the conditions before you, which there are a total of 12. I'm available for any questions.
Okay, does anybody in the commission have any questions for staff? Okay. Oh, yes, Commissioner Kia.
Yeah, on the conditions, you show no stacking, but with a drive-through lane for a bank, are there any rules as far as number of cars in line, overflow, anything of that nature? Should the lines exceed the available space to get into the drive-through lanes?
So they have to have stacking for up to 3 cars after, so 4 cars total, which we felt, given how long the lanes are, that there was adequate space for that amount of stacking. Did I misunderstand your question?
No, you're right. Like, as they're coming in, do you guys feel as though there's enough space for cars to line up and not kind of overflow onto the street?
Yes.
Okay.
They come in and they make an immediate right if they're going to go to those, and we felt there was at least 4 car lengths stacking available there.
Okay. And is it 3 lanes that they're going to have? Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, 3
Okay.
teller lanes. Or
So is that basically like ATM, like the modern kind of teller machine, if you will?
yes, so they might be able to expand on it, but they are, it's a remote teller in that it is actually talking to the person inside the bank, I believe, is my understanding of it. So it is not totally a machine automated system. They have the ability to speak with someone inside the building without going inside.
Very good, thank you. Yes, Commissioner Faulkner.
Helps if I have the mic on. Just a quick point, Ms. Jardot, what I thought I heard was that we were talking about stacking 4 cars, including the one at the automated teller, whatever, but I have not found it yet this evening, but there are 3 lanes, but I believe for a bank that the stacking requirement was 3, counting the car at the machine. Have not found that yet, but I was only looking for it to handle 3 cars stacked.
I think it's on page 8,
Yeah.
so just of your staff report.
Yeah.
I
Well,
had,
the drawing shows 4, but I think that drawing out of code was for a restaurant situation rather than bank.
yes, but the vehicle stacking number is based on the previous page of the staff report, which, yes, is financial institutions. The stacking requirement is 3.
Ah,
I read that as 3 and then the other car.
okay. And
So that, but,
I think actually code states 3 including, and again, I have not found that this evening, but I think it's stated in code 3 including the car at the machine. So,
Yeah,
okay. I think
At
it
least
either,
on-
just to be clear,
okay,
As I say,
They
on that
exceed that.
previous page, Commissioner Faulkner, on page 8 of the report, it doesn't state, it just says minimum vehicle stacking spaces as follows, stacking requirement 3. So that would probably assume including the one
right,
in
well,
the front of the lane.
yeah, thank you, and now I see it, look at item D at the very bottom below the chart. Sorry. Nope, look at item B, I'm sorry. Vehicle stacking spaces include the space at the menu board, order box, or service window. So
So that would
I'm
be
taking
adequate.
that to include the vehicle at the machine in the 3. All right, enough.
gotcha.
Just did not want to mislead anybody.
Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Kia.
So then just also to kind of clarify, these are 3 teller lanes. There's not an ATM lane at this location.
I think, well,
The
obviously,
applicant can answer, but it's my understanding that they can also use it as an ATM, but I'll let them answer.
an all-in-one machine.
Okay.
Do we have any more questions for the staff? Otherwise, we can allow the applicant to, any more? Okay. If not, we'd ask the applicant to go ahead and present your case, please.
Good evening. My name is Andy Meyer with Gastinger Walker Architects, M-E-Y-E-R. Excuse me. We're pleased to be here tonight. Thank you for having us. Community America is excited to expand into this area here. We've worked with Katie and her staff, and we feel we're meeting the requirements with the city and providing a good design for the city. To address the specific ATM comments for the drive-through, those are in what they call an ITM, which would be it would be a traditional ATM functionality, but they also have the functionality where they can remote access to a teller, whether that person is in the branch or at their headquarters building in Lenexa. So there is an opportunity to speak to an individual on a screen for those ATMs. I think in general we have read the conditions outlined by staff here, and we agreed to those. And I would say we're just here to answer any other questions that you guys may have.
Thank you. Does anybody on the commission have any questions for Mr. Meyer? Commissioner Arquilla.
So then on that note, do you know, will they have staff on site? Will it have like an open lobby where people can go inside as well?
Yes, that's
And-
correct. There will be staff on site to do a traditional, kind of a more traditional branch setting, but those machines will be tied into their remote headquarters, their call center per se.
Sure. And do you know how many jobs it'll be creating?
I'll let
5? Okay.
Could you clarify on that a little bit? I think I heard you, because I was, at least on the drawings I received, it does show so that there are 2 more of those ITM machines inside, but there's not a traditional, walk-up teller desk. Is that correct? So it's more of like an open
That's correct.
open floor plan with
It's an open floor plan, kind of more directed to
self-service?
interaction with their members, where there will be staff to help people,
Okay,
but people can use an ATM also.
okay. Any additional questions from the commission? I had one quick question. I realize this probably seems pretty random, and it's maybe something not everybody would look at. Looking at the landscape plan that I received, as I get all the way back to it, and I don't know if this is maybe another time or another question or a question for another time, and staff can notify me if not. But regarding the plant schedule, I just had a couple of, I guess maybe more comments than questions. One of the items on there, the first listed tree is a hedge maple that's listed on there, and although it's not listed in our qualified tree, the city has an actual tree list. It's not listed as prohibited, but it is under sites and buffers. It is listed as a not qualified tree. So I don't know if that's something that staff would have an issue of. Not qualified or prohibited under our tree plan would say undesirable qualities include inadequate canopy, short-lived, unsustainable, without chemical application, susceptible to structural failure, ready host to disease or toxicity or to humans or pets. And I did kind of look it up, and it seems like it is considered an invasive tree. And a lot of things that I looked up online said it is not recommended. It's not the city's stance, but it's a not recommended tree for planting.
Okay.
So I didn't know if that's just, hey, feedback, maybe you guys should consider something different, or, this is a kind of a brand guideline tree for a CACU property.
No,
But
that is not a brand guideline, and I would say that we would work with staff to review that and revise that accordingly.
sure. So it like I said, it doesn't say that it's prohibited, but it is listed as a not qualified, so it's kind of a
Sure.
50-50. And then the other one was the Kentucky coffee tree, and again, I realize this is getting super granular, so I apologize. And it is listed as a recommended in our tree guide on page 7, but it says to plant the male only. So I don't know if you can ask your arborist, but apparently the female coffee tree it has poisonous pods
Okay.
that are toxic to some animals, and they are very messy. So it's plant male only is what our city tree guidelines. So I realize, like I said, I'm sorry, that's super granular, and you probably have never had anybody bring that up to you, so I apologize.
I'm not the landscape architect, to be completely honest with you, but we will definitely work with our consultant to get that correct.
Sure. But I am, otherwise, I didn't have any questions. If nobody else has any, Commissioner Mansard, please.
I had one quick question. You mentioned that there would be about 5 jobs created from this. Are these going to be high turnover teller jobs, or is there going to be maybe a branch manager position, or a loan officer in-house? Could you speak to that?
So this is
From-
Chris Wolf with Community America.
Again, thank you guys for having us in tonight. I say 5 jobs, they would not be a high turnover rate job. We actually, being that we have the 2 ITMs that you pointed out inside, there really isn't a teller job at all inside of this branch. The 5 roles would be more of a consultative role that for financial advice and more complex things than a normal teller. They will be able to operate as a teller and do teller type jobs without a doubt, but they would be a little higher level role than that. Our turnover rate is pretty low in the banking world at Community America, and as well as the 5 roles would be permanent roles here, but there would also be at times a financial planner might be in that office. There might be a mortgage person working in that office, so there will be other ancillary type roles in there as well.
Mr. Zur, yes.
Thank you, Chairman Wiggins. From the perspective of whether or not this is a good location and a good fit, I'd request the commission stay focused with regard to the land use at hand rather than the economic development that would be associated with it. Obviously, some of the questions that the commission has provided this evening would relate to some of the operations with the ITMs as opposed to ATMs. I get that. But from a perspective of how many jobs are we going to have, who's going to be in here, what are these jobs going to be paying, probably not appropriate from the commission's perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Zur. Commissioner Bowie.
If there's no other questions or concerns, I'd like to make a motion.
If there's no others, Mr. Bowie, please.
All right. Make a motion that the Planning and Zoning Commission accept staff proposed findings of facts, and approve case 20022, Community America Site Plan, subject to the 12 conditions.
I'd second that.
is there 16 conditions or 12?
I have 12. 12. Okay.
12?
And I heard a second. Was that Mr. Mayor? Thank you, sir. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Bowie and second by Mayor Turnbow to accept staff finding of fact and forward case 20022, subject to the 12 conditions to City Council. Does that sound correct, Mr. Sir? Thank you, sir. Oh, yes, sir.
Sorry.
Sorry, open to discussion. I'm sorry.
Now, I got to remember to turn the mic on. Mr. Zur, just a question. That was a good discussion about the tree list, and in particular, the first tree, I'm not sure I'd quote the name right, hedge maple. Would you advise that we should add that as a 13th condition, or how do you think that should be handled?
That would be the discretion of the commission this evening. If they're inclined to have a proposed amendment adding a 13th, there would be then a second to approve that proposed condition as a 13th condition, and then a vote in order to add that in. You'd then have a vote on your underlying application or your underlying motion as amended. Right now, the applicant has indicated a commitment to make the alteration, but if you want to ensure that that is done and guarantee that that is done, you would want to include that as one of your conditions.
Could I also get Ms. Jardot's input on that?
Yes, I would agree that they've committed to working with staff to either find a replacement and plant the male only. But if you want to make it a condition, we would need to make another motion.
Commissioner Bowie? Yeah.
What's your decision on that?
Well, it's your motion. So honestly, if I at least
Anyone could make a motion to amend the main motion that's on the floor at this point. That would require a second and then a vote. That would amend Commissioner Bowie's proposed underlying motion.
I'll remember that. We
are you-
record
are you
these.
okay- Are you okay with that, or do you want us to make the amendment? Because I think you're the one that's primarily concerned about it.
If I may, Mr. Zur, as an alternative to an amendment, would it be proper for Commissioner Bowie to withdraw and
Restate.
make the motion again with the 13th condition?
That is one option that would be acceptable in order to get to the same. I mean, you're talking about two roads to the same end is what you're
Well,
talking about.
I sense that Commissioner Bowie was maybe amenable to withdrawing and restating the motion.
Okay, I'll withdraw the motion.
Okay, withdrawn.
As well as the second?
No.
No.
I think it's ridiculous. I think they've made the commitment to staff to make the change. Sometimes we just have to take people at their word.
Fair enough.
I'm okay with that.
Very good.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
So you are not withdrawing your motion?
All right.
I'm refraining from withdrawing the motion.
Now withdrawn. Original motion stands from Commissioner Bowie, second by
Very
Mayor
good.
Turnbow. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Opposed? Abstain. 6 in favor, no opposed, 1 abstention. I'm sorry, that would be 7 in favor. My apologies, since Commissioner Bowie is now here, my numbers were off. Thank you. All right, thank you very much. Okay, moving right along to our.
Well, may I
I'm sorry, yes, sir.
interject here? As
I
is our
apologize, yes, sir.
custom,
Mayor.
the one no vote is allowed to explain themselves.
He was abstained,
Oh, is it abstained?
Yeah.
Okay.
which I would make the assumption that's professional purposes.
Gotcha.
All right, moving right along
I gotcha.
to item D under new business, commissioner training. As is typical, I would assume this goes to Mr. Zur.
Thank you, Chairman Wiggin. It's a pleasure to be able to be before the commission this evening. I am here this evening for commissioner training at the bequest and under the guidance and enlightened review of Mayor Turnbow, who has made the request that I present an opportunity for training to each one of the boards and commissions within the city of Raymore. The goal is that I be able to do so between now and the end of the year. I've had the opportunity to present similar training to the council, and last week I had the opportunity to present a similar training to the Arts Commission. So my presentation materials have been provided to you. It's a PowerPoint presentation up on the corner of your desk. I'll go through it. My hope is to spend approximately minute and a half on each one of the slides, so it's not going to be a long, grueling, late-night training session. There will be no test at the end, so you're safe on that one as well. My hope is that we will be able to utilize this as an input opportunity, a conversation, and that I would welcome questions throughout. As with all the applications that you have the opportunity to consider, I am here to answer questions, so feel free to interrupt me as we go. Again, this is not an attempt to be all-encompassing with regard to any particular item or training area. It's just an opportunity for me to draw attention to certain topics that may be of interest with regard to the commission members. If you're looking for a more in-depth dive, deep dive on a particular item, let me know. I am happy to utilize that as my next training opportunity for you all. As part of the city's strategic planning opportunities, we're also going to be formulating a legal plan to go along with this that will likely incorporate an annual training opportunity for each one of the boards and commissions. So this is kind of the launch of that, and I'd like to again thank Mayor Turnbow for the opportunity to be able to do this for each one of the boards and commissions. I think it's a great chance to be able to make sure that I'm keeping everyone up to speed on what's going on, particularly since we've got some turnover on board. So with that, and again, I want to make sure and stress to you all, legal stands by ready to assist at any given time. Prior to the meetings, during the meetings, after the meetings, if there are follow-up questions, I am more than happy to provide that input. The first item, you're going to see the second slide that you're going to have there at the bottom of the page. It's going to cover a quick agenda for you. We're going to talk about the bylaws and rules of procedure. In the commission's perspective, you've got rules of procedure that have been adopted. You also have new Robert's Rules in the time of COVID. Most recently, we've been operating under the 12th edition of Robert's Rules. I'm sorry, the 11th edition, and the 12th edition just recently came out, which incorporates some provisions for COVID-related meetings, opportunity for video, Zoom, etc. And I'm going to talk real shortly about how that impacts upon the commission, and in many ways how it doesn't impact upon the commission. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about public meetings during the holidays. Given that we're coming into Thanksgiving and Christmas time, I want to make sure and give you some oversight as to what's appropriate, what's not appropriate perhaps to discuss at the upcoming holiday meetings where you may have 1, 2, or more of you present. Next item I'll talk about is an appearance of impropriety. And I have a great benefit here in that everyone that has served on commissions and boards and everyone that has served on the council and mayor's position are all of the highest moral, ethical caliber. So I'm stretching to try and find an area of education for individuals, and so the only thing I've got is kind of a mushy area between, hey, everything is wonderful, and hey, we've done something wrong, to we've got an appearance of something being wrong, and is that enough for us to be able to educate ourselves up to avoid that in the future? The next item I'm going to cover is social media and sunshine law and how that affects it, and then finally I'll take any questions that you have at the end. Any questions with regard to the agenda or where we're going to cover this evening? And again, I'll try and keep the pace moving. My goal is to not bore you all to death, but I will guarantee that I probably will. So stop me at any given time. If you're looking for anecdotal input or examples of a particular situation, I'm happy to try and provide those, and I'll spice it up with as exciting an example as I can give. Next slide you're going to have is going to be the Commission Rules of Procedure. The Commission Rules, the Commission has in fact adopted the Planning and Zoning Commission Rules of Procedure. They are available. Happy to provide those to each member of the Commission. It overviews kind of where, if the Robert's Rules don't apply, and if we don't have a rule of procedure, if we don't have an ordinance or statute controlling, the rules of procedure are going to be the next place that we look, in addition to Robert's Rules, for how we govern ourselves. Under the Commission Rules of Procedure, understand that there is authority that's provided both statutorily as well as by charter and by the Unified Development Code for the authorization to establish this commission. Charter, Section 8.1, indicates that the Planning and Zoning Commission shall act in accordance with, shall have such authority as conferred by, and shall in general carry out the spirit and intent of Sections 89.080 through 89.130 of the revised statutes of Missouri, which govern land development and municipal development within the state of Missouri. Chapter 89, of course, is the underlying authority, and we will refer to that on a regular basis. If you all have questions before the meeting about a particular statutory provision, I'm happy to provide that. But that overview is how we go about subdividing property in the state of Missouri. Under the UDC, Unified Development Code, Section 465.020, A through I really covers the vast majority of Planning and Zoning Commission rules and authority. You'll also have included within there kind of an overview of who all serves. So you all serve for 4-year terms. Mayor may also serve. We have 2 members from each ward represented. It also provides the powers and duties of the commission. Those powers and duties include the decisions on zoning map and text amendments, the power to make decisions on conditional uses, the power to make decisions on special use permits, the power to make decisions on planned unit developments, the power to make decisions on preliminary and final plats, to make decisions on vacations of streets and reservations, and to decide appeals on site plan reviews conducted by staff. So if there is a decision made by the staff at the level for a site plan review that they don't like, they have that opportunity for appeal and review here. Obviously, you all are the first line for public input put on any development plans and land use applications. You are required, under the terms of your Unified Development Code and also stressed in the terms of the Rules of Procedure, to consider all public comments and testimony provided at public hearings during your deliberations of a development application. I'd note again here, this is not just the residents of Raymore, but it can be anyone who has an input with regard to an application. You all then have the opportunity to weigh that particular weight. Question for, hey, how much weight do I give to an individual who doesn't live in the city of Raymore versus an individual who does, is up to you. But you are here principally to represent the citizenry of the city of Raymore when reviewing development applications, so please always keep that in mind. You're also here to help protect the public health, safety, and welfare from any potential impacts of new development. Remember, most of the time you are acting as an advisory board to the council. However, the council gives strong deference to the commission decisions and often asks the basis for any negative votes, even if it still passes. And I'll refer back to Mayor Turnbow on this. Recently, we had a negative vote for an application. It received an overall approval, an overall recommendation of approval, but because it was not a unanimous vote, there were council members who inquired as to, well, was there any reasoning for the basis of the negative vote? What was the concerns that were expressed? Staff will always speak up in order to provide input, the Reader's Digest synopsis of what the negative vote was, which is a good reason why after you do have a negative vote on a particular application, we give you the opportunity to provide your input. Hey, what were you unsatisfied? What was the concern? That allows us to report back to the council with any of those questions. Any other input? Chairman, welcome to the chair's position.
Thank you.
Under your rules of procedure, there's an outline of other items that you may be considered to look at as far as your job is concerned. You are taking a role from Chairman Faulkner, former Chairman Faulkner, who has served in that capacity for many, many years and did an excellent job of soft-handed approach to applications, but always very focused on issues that were pertinent to the applications before them. Under your rules of procedure, there's direction for the new chairman. You are to preside at all meetings of the commission. You are to call special meetings of the commission as needed. You're to see that all actions of the commission are properly taken. You are responsible for conducting the meeting and may take appropriate actions as necessary for the commission to fulfill its responsibilities. You're also responsible for pronouncing the decisions of the commission for purposes of recording the minutes. Those are the ones that are outlined. Obviously, if you want to pick up the tab at the end of the evening, that's another one that you can throw in there. But I'm just kidding on that one.
I would be happy to if COVID was going on, or if it would be inappropriate for us to all be together at one time.
The next slide you have in here is a quick rules of procedure pop quiz that I put together this afternoon based upon the information included in the rules of procedure. Many of these are softball questions for you, particularly given that we've just had our election of officers this evening. So you have 3 officers for this commission. Those 3 officers include a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary. You all serve. The second question is, who appoints members of the commission? You all serve with the appointment of the mayor with the advice and consent of the council. Third question under our pop quiz is, how many unexcused absences are you allowed? The answer to that is 3 consecutive meetings in a 12-month period without justification, excuse, or good cause. That doesn't ultimately result in your removal necessarily, but it does provide for the commission to recommend to the mayor that a replacement be put in. We've not had to have that as an issue, so I give that to you simply from the perspective of, hey, what about absences? My answer on that has generally been, we have not identified what an unexcused absence is. From my perspective, if you call in advance, let us know that you're not going to be here. As long as a commission member doesn't raise an issue of not excusing that particular absence, we are generally considering them to be all excused. Okay? Any questions about that? Again, not been a problem with regard to this particular commission. Is the commission required to comply with sunshine law? The quickest answer to that is yes. And what I would note on here is that has ramifications not just from the perspective of how we publish our notice, how we post our notice in advance of the meetings for the commission, but also how we act with regard to emails, social media, and otherwise. And I'm going to loop back around at the end of this presentation to talk about a little bit more on the social media and the emails. Suffice to say, as far as sunshine is concerned, the best thing you can do when dealing with commission subjects and commission business is to utilize your raymore.com email address that's been issued to you. There will be, do we not have?
I don't have one at least. I don't believe the commission does. I believe that's a council thing.
I would highly recommend that we utilize raymore.com, and I'm sure staff can get that, if that's an option. Basically, if you're utilizing your personal email account for conducting business from the commission level, there's the potential that email account can be identified for evidentiary purposes. We'd like to avoid that if possible, so a raymore.com account has been provided to most of, and I apologize, I was under the impression that had been provided to all commissions.
Other than the mayor, does anybody
My
have
apologies.
one?
This is an education for me as well on this one, so thank you. Again, similar with regard to phone chains, and I don't want to get hung up on the email issue, but if there's going to be a discussion of business, you can't utilize a phone chain and say, hey, look, I didn't have a quorum of people talking. I called Commissioner Peterman. Commissioner Peterman called and talked with Commissioner Manser about the same issues that I talked about. Commissioner Manser called with the same issues to Commissioner Akia. By that time, we have officially made a sunshineable type of meeting and activity that's conducted. So we don't want to have a phone tree type of option to be able to secretly conduct business. Let's avoid that if we can. Moving on, and now I'm making note. Your meetings are going to be governed by a certain number of certain rules. First and foremost is state statute. Second is going to be city ordinance. After that will be items from the Unified Development Code. After that will be your rules of procedure, as we've been discussing so far. And if there is no other option available with regard to how you operate, it's going to fall to Robert's Rules of Order. Next item I've got on your pop quiz is how many members constitute a quorum? A majority of the members of the commission constitute a quorum. This evening, with 2 individuals absent, we still had a quorum present. I'm Commissioner Bowie joining with us as well. Vice Chair Pfizer out this evening. When there is more than one individual who is absent, and happened this evening, had the opportunity to talk real quickly with the applicant about what that could potentially mean, because the next question that you've got on this pop quiz is how many votes are required to adopt an action. And on that one, it's a majority of the members of the commission, commission binding unless authorized by a majority of the full membership of the commission at a regular meeting or duly called special meeting. So you'd still need, it's not a majority of those that are present, it's a majority of the full commission at that point. If we have absences for a particular meeting, generally Mr. Cataract and myself will have a conversation with the applicant beforehand and let them know, hey, look, if we don't have a full quorum or a full commission here, obviously if we have a full quorum, but if we don't have a full commission present, you're still going to need the required vote of what the full commission would be. If it appears that there's going to be a question with regard to that approval, get our attention, because we can always continue the matter right up until the time of a vote so that you would be able to have a full commission present to consider your application. Okay. Yes, sir.
So, just to make sure I'm right, you're saying that 5 is the majority of the full, and so 5 would be the answer to how many votes required to adopt an action?
Right. So you're going to have 5 would be the quorum. 5 is also going to be the minimum required of votes that you're going to have on that one.
Okay.
But obviously, that's a bare minimum for it, and if it's going to be a contentious item and there are individuals that are going to be speaking in opposition, and it's potentially going to garner opposition votes or rejecting votes on it, the applicant should be able to have a full commission there to make a determination on whether or not they proceed forward.
Okay, thanks.
Questions on that? Yes, sir.
If there's not an applicant, if it's just to do with code that we're discussing, and there's not a majority, could we still table that or continue it as a group until we have a full commission?
You could, and generally my recommendation would be if there's going to be a hang-up for it, there could be a motion that would exclude an item that may be a hang-up as an option, and direct staff to go back and reevaluate or investigate further issues that might be associated with that. I'm thinking in terms of the 33rd Unified Development Code amendment that we just recently approved. If there were 6 or 7 items in it that needed to be addressed that wasn't going to garner a full commission approval, may be appropriate for instructing staff, hey, before we vote on this, we'd like to see the following items either removed or changed or otherwise. That way we don't get hung up and not be able to move forward on it. Yes, Chairman.
So just for clarification, so like the meeting calendar tonight, if there were 5 of us here, that would be an item that probably is not going to have any opposition or question. So if we only had 5, that would be both a quorum and
And be able to move forward with approval, that's
and then whereas we had a meeting 1.5 or 2 years ago where there were only 5 members and there were opposing votes, so therefore that would be an opportunity where the person presenting maybe say, hey, let's table this.
Generally, what we will end up telling the applicant is, you've got 5 individuals who are present here this evening. You're going to have to get a unanimous vote of all the individuals that are present in order to have this application move forward with the recommendation of approval or to receive a final approval for that application.
Yeah.
Okay?
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. And obviously, I welcome staff to jump in on if there's anything I'm missing here, too. Commission motions, common motions is your next slide that you're going to see in there. I'm not going to focus too much on the main motion or the motion to withdraw. I will point out a couple of items there. A motion to postpone consideration if further information is required before further action is taken. This would be, of course, recognized by the chair, given to the floor before making the motion, and seconded. It does require a second. It is debatable and amendable, and it would require a majority vote of the full. The next one would be a motion to limit, extend, or close debate. Obviously, if the commission feels that the time of debate should be altered, generally the chair should be there to make sure that all differing viewpoints are heard, but this motion can alter that time frame if inclined. If seeking to close debate, the motion basically acts as a calling of the question. So if we've exhausted all the discussion, we're just repeating the same thing over and over again, and we're not getting anywhere, a motion to limit the further debate or a motion to close debate are options that would be available. Next one is a motion to recess. The time period of the recess would ultimately be determined by the chair. So if there's individuals that need a break, hey, we need to cool the jets a little bit, or alternatively, hey, we've been going at this for 4 or 5 hours now and it's midnight and we all need to stand up and stretch our legs. It's an opportunity for recess. Ultimately, the time frame for that recess falls upon the chair. So a motion and a second and approval to recess, and then the chair would note the recess and how long it was going to be before we come back for further discussion. Going to skip on further down. The motion to reconsider. Motion to reconsider is only made by someone who voted on a winning side. It requires a second and a majority vote. It must be made before the next meeting. Now, you're not going to you'll very rarely have that as an option, but if there is something that needs to be considered during the course of that meeting, hey, I've had some issues, I want to come back to discuss it, your 34th amendment to the UDC, and I want to reconsider, that's an option that you could utilize. The last two that I'll talk about are going to be the point of procedure and the point of privilege. The point of procedure is addressed to the chair, doesn't require a second, it's not debatable, and it's basically a inquiry of, hey, how would I go about doing this? So, for example, a point of procedure, Chair, I have a point of procedure on this one I'd like to address with Mr. Zur. Mr. Zur, I have a question with regard to how we'd go about wording a proposed motion here. Or in the alternative, for example, we had a motion in the negative not too long ago, and the question would be, hey, is it appropriate at this particular time to do a motion in the negative? Motion is in the negative, hey, I vote to reject this proposed application, are not really favored all that often, but sometimes they're appropriate to make, and if that's the issue, it appears that you've got everyone around the table who is making comments about how upset they are about a particular application, may be appropriate to word it in the terms of a negative. Make sense? Again, I like to avoid the negative motion if at all possible.
And for the record, I did not use the word reject. I said do not accept.
The last one I'm going to talk about is a point of privilege. Point of privilege is going to be raised when you've got an issue. I can't hear, I don't have that particular piece of the application, I can't see, it's not on my screen. Again, it's not debatable. This is more or less a cry for help. Hey, staff, something's going on here and I need help. Identify it to the chair. I need a point of privilege. Sir, I can't see, whatever it might be here. We'll fix that at that point. Okay? Any questions about some of those common motions? Moving on. New Roberts rules in the time of COVID. The most recent edition, the 12th edition, made 89 different changes. It's my goal this evening to cover each one of those with you in detail. I know how excited you are about that. In truth, Robert's rules have been adopted for for all of the boards and commissions within the city of Raymore, at least that I have worked with. And the rules of procedure and of this commission, the rules of process and procedure for the commission, make specific reference to that under Article 6, Section 7, provides that Robert's Rules of Order are hereby adopted for the governing of the commission in all cases not otherwise provided for in these rules. City attorney shall be consulted for interpretation of the rules stated herein or Robert's Rules of Order. So your rules of procedure make specific reference to Robert's Rules. We'll be utilizing Robert's Rules 12th edition. Again, there were 89 different changes that were identified in the 12th edition. The deeper I dug into the 89 changes, the less applicable to the commission or to any of the commissions of the city they actually appear, and that's based really upon sunshine. We're required to have postings, we're required to have public meetings, we're required to have individuals present, and this is going to come up when we talk about meetings in our next section too. And it's the notion of why we need to have a physical location for actually conducting a meeting. This came up in an email, I think, even today, and I want to make sure and be able to address that for you. Overall, there are relatively limited impact on the operations of the commission, as we also are bound by sunshine and compliance with other statutory requirements for governmental bodies. I would note here and applaud staff, Mr. Cataret, Ms. Jardot, as well as City Manager Fearborn, for the methods instituted during COVID, allowing the city to continue their operations, to be responsive to the citizens' needs, and to allow input and due process for citizen involvement. Even this evening, we are doing social distancing. We have plexiglass in between us. We have masks option available when we're moving around the room and not moving around the room. And we've utilized this particular location as opposed to the council chambers to allow more public input. All of those were greatly appreciated from the perspective of complying with governing ordinance, governing rules, and statutory provisions. With regard to Robert's Rules and parliamentary procedure in general, I'm going to quote from the Manual for Newly Elected Officials, and I'm happy to provide that to any of the individuals around this table, regardless of the fact that you're not elected officials, because it's a handy item for anyone who sits on a commission. It quotes, "Parliamentary procedure is designed to ensure that the will of the majority prevails and that the right of the minority to be heard is protected. In the hands of the presiding officer, it should be a tool, not a bludgeon. Not only commissioner chair, but all the members of the commission or board should be familiar with the rudiments of parliamentary procedure so that decorum is preserved, business is expedited, and citizen respect is maintained. Remember, however, the best parliamentary guide is respect for one's fellow members and preservation of the majority rule." Again, ultimately going back to parliamentary procedure, the goal is to make sure that everyone gets their say, everyone gets the opportunity for appropriate input without dragging it out as well. I'm going to move on if there are no questions with regard to Robert's Rules. I'm happy to go over particular questions that you might have had regarding prior procedure, prior process. Hey, what would I do in this particular circumstance? We'll go back real quickly to some of the motions. A motion to amend, and we had that issue come up this evening. Original motion on the floor, it's seconded. The notion then becomes, do I amend that original motion? In order to amend it, you'd get a motion to amend and a second to amend. There'd be a vote on that. That amendment then gets incorporated into the underlying motion or is rejected and doesn't, and you're considering the original underlying motion, and then that one is voted upon. In some of the commissions and boards that I've worked with, a lot of times they'll look back to the original person who made the motion. Hey, do you amend that motion? If they amend that motion, then we just move forward. That's technically not the right route to go from a perspective of overall. I'm not meaning to point out Commissioner Bowie on that one, just simply from the perspective. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Anyone is there to amend it, and anyone is there to second that proposed amendment. Moving on, public meetings during the holidays. And here's where I'm going to come back to the question with regard to why we have to have a direct location. My slide that you'll see, Sunshine with a Chance of Holiday Cheer, makes reference to Section 610.020 of the Revised Statutes of Missouri. All public governmental bodies shall give notice of the time, date, and place of each meeting and its tentative agenda in a manner reasonably calculated to advise the public of the matters to be considered, and if the meeting will be conducted by telephone or electronic means. So it does provide the opportunity to have telephone, electronic, or other means. We accept that, we acknowledge that. In fact, the council utilized that on a regular basis throughout the course of COVID. The notice of the meeting shall identify the mode by which the meeting will be conducted and the designated location where the public may observe and attend the meeting. In this regard, from my interpretation, from the interpretation of a number of the other city attorneys, the notion is we have to have some physical location where the public can go to participate or see the meeting. It's going to always be my goal to have staff present at a physical location so we can allow public to come in, allow public to participate in the meeting. Be my goal to make sure we have a quorum here that's present, but if for some reason you're unable to attend for a particular evening, there is no reason why you shouldn't be able to do so from electronic means or through Zoom, WebEx, or otherwise. And I think our COVID experience is teaching us, along with all of the other cities in the state of Missouri and around the country, how to be flexible with that. Questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, so you mentioned that for you and the other city attorneys that you've decided that this kind of means a physical location for the citizens in a sense to attend, but it wouldn't be feasible or it wouldn't qualify if they were given like a login or anything along that nature where they could still plug in, still have the opportunity to speak or ask questions. You're saying that the interpretation, which is fine, is that it has to be an actual physical location.
I'm not going so far as to say it can be entirely electronic or otherwise. The statutory provisions, and I know that we've gotten some leeway from the governor on how we operate meetings, but I am not so comfortable with the notion when it says a specific reference to designated location where the public may observe and attend. That gives me a sense of physicality, physical presence for it. So yeah, I'm hedging my bets on that one from legal counsel's perspective.
Sure. And along those lines too, do you feel as though we also have to have a physical presence, or like for instance, if the public were allowed to come here, see us on the screen, and still ask the questions, but with us being logged in virtual, would that qualify, or is that still
So
kind of
far, I am
outside
lucky
the
that I have not had to make that particular call. So we've generally had mayor present, staff present, members of the council present, and in almost all circumstances where we've had that opportunity to discuss. I think as long as we're able to have some presence with the individual members from the commission, I'm going to continue to promote that. We obviously have instituted options that will allow for avoiding COVID transfer or otherwise. Any other questions or concerns?
Was there one council meeting where, Mayor Turnbow,
Yep.
you just held it by yourself with a phone in front of you and everybody else was? or
Yeah,
was that-
so we were at the city council chamber, and they were all piped in electronically. And I think that's the thing that if that were to happen again, if we were to really shut down, then you would probably be as the chair present
Yep.
for that and would conduct the meeting from the physical site, and the rest of us would.
But that's just for clarification, so that would be adequate, that would qualify, because if, let's say we even held it in here because it was even bigger, myself, city staff, and then if we needed to, public had an opportunity, really it's just providing the public an ability, if they're so comfortable, to come in and at least have somebody to be in front of, but everybody else reasonably could be electronically logged in some other way.
That's a fair assessment, though I think that's going to be for an emergency purposes only. In fact,
Sure.
I think that evening, Mayor, we had emergency decisions that needed to be made, and we had been shut down across the board at that
Yeah.
point. So, yeah, I will use that on a sparingly basis for emergency purposes, I think.
Yeah, but if somebody on our commission is not comfortable attending one of our meetings, we have
Make
the
accommodations.
opportunity.
we have the
to make
opportunity to
arrangements.
accommodate them, so just FYI.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on, next slide you'll have there is the definition of a public meeting. And this is where we get into the areas that would be more associated with your holiday parties. So Any meeting of a public governmental body is subject to 610.010 to 610.030, at which public business is discussed, decided, or public policy is formulated, whether such meeting is conducted in person or by means of communication equipment. Here's the telephone game that you cannot play, including but not limited to conference call, video conference, internet chat, or internet board. The term public meeting shall not include an informal gathering of members of a public governmental body for ministerial or social purposes where there is no intent to avoid the purposes of this chapter. So from the statutory provision, there are 3 items that I'm going to point out for concerns or issues that will keep your city attorney up at night. And the first is going to be, is there a quorum of a public body present or participating? The next is there a discussion of public business taking place? Hey, did you see our packet for next week? Can you believe that application that got submitted? I have real issues and concerns. Let's discuss that in greater detail here at this cocktail party. I have concerns with that one. Or discussion on public policy formulation. So if it's a, hey, you know, the last time we were at our Planning and Zoning Commission, I realized that there are problems with our UDC. I think we need to address that. You want to sit and talk about that here while we're playing horseshoes or whatever it might be. Those are areas where I'd have concern that you're holding a public meeting when there's a quorum present, discussion of public business, and a public policy formulated. In my fair hometown of Independence, we had the Inglewood Cafe where there was a big brouhaha over quorum present of individual council members over a breakfast. It was an excellent breakfast. I would never talk bad about the food at the Inglewood Cafe. It's amazing if you get that opportunity. But you can't hold a meeting there without posting that you're going to hold a meeting there. And so my fair council got in trouble for that a number of years ago. We also have other examples, and I'll flip the case over to the next page, which is the case studies. And there are 2 examples here that I will provide to you. The first example is the thumbs up. You've got your city attorney's board or a stamp of approval for it, and the other one is thumbs down. Not only is your city attorney unhappy, but your city attorney is actually in trouble for it as well. So we'll talk about each of those real quickly. The first one, Colombo versus Buford. In that particular case, it was a school district officials. They met for a social gathering in one of their homes. The district representatives were present with other people from the community. Everyone's mingling about. Gathering was unstructured. There was no agenda, no gavel to call it to order. No one was taking turns to actually present evidence or information to the entire participants of the body. Questions were of a general educational nature. Hey, let's decide whether or not we're going to continue with middle school or if we're just going to bump them straight from elementary school to high school. You know, that's a general philosophical aspect of education. No votes were taken and no specific policy was established. In that particular regard, the court found that there was no problems there with regard to a public meeting taking place. It was a social atmosphere that relates back to the slide that you saw in the former case. In contrast to that, Kansas City Star versus Shields. In this case, your chairman and 2 members of the finance committee met with the city manager and the city budget director. The city attorney in that particular place was the individual who organized the meeting, so the city attorney reserved the room at Fedora's Restaurant, the back room at Fedora's Restaurant, in order to hold the meeting. It was a private dining room that it was held in. There were handouts that were provided during the course of the meeting. There was a memorandum which looked suspiciously like minutes of a meeting after it was completed. And the following day, the committee unanimously adopted a budget agreement. And the matters discussed were specific, significant, sensitive, and controversial budget matters that had been discussed at the meeting before at Fedora's Restaurant. A quorum of the committee was present. With all of these in play, the council came back and got in trouble from the courts, and it was indicated, hey, this was a public hearing that should have been noticed, should have been allowing for public input, should have allowed for public attendance. And again, this goes back to what you're not supposed to be doing. In that case, I would note here that a civil fine was imposed upon the attorney who organized the meeting and reserved the room. And in my particular role, I'd appreciate not being drawn into that if at all possible. So thank you all very much for that in advance. Again, try not to utilize your personal email accounts with regard to discussing business of the commission, and obviously we'll fix that moving forward. And we'll discuss again in more detail some of the Attorney General's opinions with regard to the appearance of impropriety, which if you're doing business in a back room of a restaurant, then you've got a high likelihood of an appearance of impropriety when you've got individuals in public who may well see what's going on. Any questions about that? Okay. Moving on. Appearance of impropriety. The next slide you're going to have here is a battle that between State Auditor Galloway and Senator Hawley, and the ultimate outcome of this. A recent report indicating there was no, so a complaint had been filed about then AG Hawley and how he was administering his office. Nicole Galloway comes in order to do an audit and a review of it. At the conclusion of her audit and review, the result is, hey, we didn't find anything that was necessarily illegal. Yes, there was missing information with regard to some travel reports. There was some missing information with regard to meeting reports, but nothing that would appear to be illegal. However, it had the appearance of impropriety. My challenge would be, anytime you end up in the paper with appearance of impropriety after your name, you really don't want to have that if all possible, even if you haven't done something illegal. So a recent report indicating that there was no clear evidence of state laws being broken, but did find then Missouri AG Josh Hawley appeared to have used state resources to meet with consultants for purposes not always documented, used state vehicles and a state driver and security detail for some trips which were not logged. The notion is, even if not illegal, the appearance of impropriety is still not how you want to show up in the press. And I will qualify this to say, to be fair, there's always another side of the story. And Hawley, of course, comes back and alleges that Ms. Galloway utilized her position, her inquiry, and her audit for partisan political gain. And, of course, there is also a pending investigation, or at the time, investigation by the Board of Accountancy as to whether or not that was utilized for political gain. So, obviously, political battle going on here back and forth. What I want you to pull from this is the last thing you want to do is appear in the newspaper under the notion of appearance of impropriety. We'll talk a little bit about some of those moving forward. Your next slide is taken from the Manual for Newly Elected Officials. Again, great resource for anyone, regardless of whether or not you're an elected official or just sitting on a commission or a board of the city. City officials should be aware that the appearance of evil can be as harmful as the evil itself. It is both the evil of an individual occupying a public position using the trust imposed in them and the position they occupy to further their own personal gain, and the appearance of such evil that the law seeks to eradicate. And again, we're lucky that we don't have to discuss any particular violations. Again, this is more of a mushy area in between it's right, it's wrong. And the problem is the perception of being wrong is in fact wrong in our society. And that's what we're trying to get past. And I know it's not fair, but it's the world we live in. And it's always going to be viewed in the eyes of the complainant who would say, hey, it appeared to be inappropriate, it appeared to be wrong, that will draw those. Here, I think I'd note, the one concern that I'd have for commission members is if you're out in the field and you visit with some of the sites and the locations that you all consider as part of your applications, I'm going to go back to making sure that your comments, your suggestions are limited at best. So I know I've focused on this in the past with training. If you run into a neighboring property owner, you're there to listen. You can ask questions, but you're not there to make sure and submit or commit. So if you're out there in the field and you say, you know what, I don't see that there's any way that this application would potentially pass at all whatsoever, that's to me a big no-no on this. If anyone finds out that that was indicated, incorrect, appropriate, or an incorrect step to begin with, but it also has the appearance of impropriety because you're making a decision without a full determination of the facts before you at the hearing. Okay? Questions? Examples on the next page. The first one is Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee was involved in an ambulance fire protection district. They were sued, and at the conclusion of that lawsuit, which resulted in a dismissal, the commission, and Mr. Lee was specifically identified in the lawsuit, voted, and Mr. Lee specifically voted to approve his $16,000 in attorney's fees. It was not illegal for him to make that vote at that meeting, but it had the appearance of impropriety because he was in essence voting to benefit himself the $16,000 that he paid in his legal fees. Make sense? Mr. Levy votes to approve paying his attorney's fees, $16,000 as part of the settlement. The problem was his specific vote to approve those fees. The decision came out from the MEC in September, the Missouri Ethics Commission in September of 2011, and noted here, hey, we didn't find any reasonable grounds existed for a violation of the conflicts of interest policies in the state of Missouri. However, your action of voting for the $16,000 settlement to pay your attorney's fees resulting from litigation against you creates the appearance of impropriety and should have been avoided, and you are admonished to avoid such conduct in the future. Again, last things you want to see following your name in the newspaper. Next time we have is, in this particular case, it was another less than astute public official. identifying the language. I'd note the highlighted language appears on multiple reports and decisions from the Missouri Ethics Commission over avoiding the appearance of evil. In this particular case, out of 2007, the chief of the Fire Protection District, his wife was an independent marketing director for a company selling benefit packages on commission, and wanted to be able to go into the fire stations around the fire district in order to sell this benefits package. Now, when it's the chief's wife, it makes it hard to say no, not necessarily the impropriety itself, but the appearance of impropriety, and the commission indicated to the chief that he should conduct himself and avoid that potential appearance of a violation. Again, no identification of a violation by the commission, but it is an appearance of impropriety that is inappropriate here. Any questions on that so far? The last one gives me the opportunity to provide an overview of, hey, when in doubt, ask the lawyer. In this particular case, the gentleman that was of issue here was a little bit more astute. He advised in advance the concerns that he had. In this particular case, in July of 2008, an alderman lived within a redevelopment area. He cohabitated with a female owner of property that lived within the redevelopment area. He'd raised the question as to whether or not there was a conflict of interest if he participated in the discussions relating to the acquisition strategies and the negotiations for property that was being considered as part of this redevelopment. Ultimately, it was determined that he didn't have a direct conflict of interest, and he agreed not to participate in any vote relating to the property that he lived in, but still continued to vote with regard to the full area of the redevelopment. And again, from the facts presented, the Missouri Ethics Commission came back in and said, you know, not a conflict on either count. You did the right thing by not participating in the discussions when it came to your particular property, but you still did the consideration when it involved the entirety of the redevelopment area. The MEC made a couple of really good quotes from this, or comments. First one was, from the facts presented, the question of whether a conflict of interests exists by its very nature involves two issues. The first issue is whether the statutes require that a public official recuse or disclose their interests. And the second is whether a public official should recuse or disclose their interest when an appearance of impropriety exists. On the first one, the statutes are going to control. On the second, it's a case-by-case analysis and will depend upon the judgment and discretion of the public official. So ultimately, if you've got a question, hey, is this a direct violation? Absolutely. Come see me, ask that question in advance. I'm happy to provide the answer to you. On the back side, is it going to look like it's an indiscretion? That's going to be a decision that you all can make. But I will probably refer back to that, hey, is it going to have an appearance of impropriety for you afterwards? Next page you've got is gifts and favors. Gifts and favors, don't take gifts, don't take favors in exchange for votes on this commission. I'm not sure I need to say that. Hope I don't need to say that.
Can I ask you a question, though?
Yes, sir.
It says no elected official, and we're not elected officials.
That is true, but I'm going to caution you from the perspective of taking gifts in advance. And I'm going to give you an example of this one, and it's going to be a far-fetched example, but I want to use it for hyperbole for purposes of education. So if you are awarded the greatest planner in the world trophy, that might be okay from a local homes association or a local entity or something like that. Be fine to receive that kind of award. It's could be open to anyone on the commission ultimately. But if you receive that award and you had just recently voted in favor of denying an application that the HOA was in favor or was seeking to deny, or you were garnering that award for some vote that was being made or would be made, I have concerns with regard to that one. Lunches, not a big deal, though I want to avoid having many of those as an option. Gifts in general. So if you were to receive a large gift after a meeting, hey, you guys voted in approval of this, here's a gift basket for all of your hard work in approving this application. I have real concern about that one. Regardless of whether or not you're elected or not elected, you're still a board and commission that falls within Missouri Sunshine and conflicts of interest provisions for the state.
Okay.
Moving on, social media. And I can probably sum up social media in one sentence for you, and that is, if you wouldn't want it showing up on Action News investigative reports, then don't send it. Social media, panacea or pandemic. Again, for politicians and their staffs today, social media is a veritable minefield with racy photo leaks to viral campaign hashtags and lawsuits over blocking followers. Social media platforms offer elected officials access to a massive audience, but it comes at a price. Again, it would be inappropriate to post your disdain, your dislike for a particular application on a personal social media account if you can help it, particularly if you know that application is coming before this commission. In advance, it would appear that you've made your mind up before you actually have the opportunity to consider it at the full commission level. I'm not going to focus too much on the second page, which is your best practices provision. What I would note here is do not post offensive photos, content, or institute a review process before any post goes live. I think these are best practices for anyone who operates social media out there, unless your social media presence is specifically to provide objectionable material in social media, in which case I can't control that one. I can't give you input on that one. Again, these are just options for you to look at and work through. In talking with the council, I gave specific examples of, hey, look, we've had lawsuits involved where the governor, the president, senators have blocked followers on their social media accounts, and blocking followers on their social media accounts is a no-no. From the perspective of you've now limited the ability of your constituency to communicate, to participate, to share, and that's been identified as violations of free speech and opportunities to be to have access to your elected officials. Again, not really heavily involved with this particular commission. And the last page I've got in here, and sadly it's the do and do not as far as keeping your personal accounts from becoming public. This would be your personal email accounts. Again, if you're communicating via personal email accounts and you're forwarding those along, that might be an area of concern for the future. And again, I'm going to suggest that as staff, we are probably happy to provide you a raymore.com account for email. Again, I think that'll wrap it up from my perspective. I don't want to drone on too long here. Happy to answer any questions you might have regarding social media, sunshine, public meetings, appearances of impropriety or otherwise. Yes, sir.
One quick question, clear back on slide 5. Mr. Zer, the last item, number 8, are public comments required? I may have zoned out. Did we cover that?
Are public comments required? I'm sorry if I skipped over that. The answer, and I guess this is your test for the evening, are public comments required, and can they be limited? The answer is yes, public comments would be required. The chairman may impose reasonable limits upon the time for consideration of any item upon the commission agenda or upon the presentation by any individual so that adequate time is afforded to all individuals wishing to speak on an application or other item before the commission. So yes, public comment is required, but the commission has the ability to control that. And during your time, you gave multiple times where it was please limit your comments to 5 minutes. Please do not repeat comments if you've already heard that from other individuals who have testified. If you want to say, I agree with everything that Mr. and Mrs. Smith said before me, that's absolutely appropriate. But yes, those are options that you have available as a chair to be able to control the timing of the meeting and to avoid duplicative or overlapping testimony.
Thanks. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Zer. So moving right along, we will move into our city council report, which probably would go right back to you, Mr. Zer.
Very good. Happy to provide the city council report. Since your last meeting on the 20th, there have been 2 city council meetings that I can report upon. The first, October 26th, 2020, there are 2 items on that agenda. The first being the North Cass Plaza preliminary plat. City council held a public hearing on that. You recall that this was the 2-lot commercial subdivision east of I-49 on this one. And then at the conclusion of the public hearing, the city council voted unanimously to approve that preliminary plat. You all had the chance to listen to this or to consider this and approved it unanimously at your meeting on the 20th of October. The next one was approval of the North Cass Plaza final plat. Again, coinciding case along with that. You all considered it on the 20th and approved it by unanimous vote. It was presented to the city council and also approved by unanimous vote for its first reading on October 26th. The next city council meeting that occurred was on November 9th. Similarly, there are two items for consideration. The first one was the second reading of the North Cass Plaza final plat. Again, voted upon and unanimously approved by the City Council, originally considered by the Planning and Zoning Commission on the 20th and approved unanimously. The second item of consideration that the City Council considered on the 9th of November was the 33rd Amendment to the Unified Development Code. Public hearing was held on that particular item, and a unanimous vote to approve the 33rd Amendment of the Unified Development Code was provided. As always, I invite Mayor Turnbow as well as staff, Mr. Cataret, Ms. Jardot, to provide any additional input if I may have missed something.
Thank you, Mr. Zer. Moving right along to our staff report. Would that be Ms. Jardot or Mr. Cataret?
Thank you. The staff report in front of you is the October staff report. A couple things to quickly note while we didn't have any, or while we had only 13 single-family residential, you'll notice we've almost completely doubled the miscellaneous residential, so roofs, decks, covered porches, things like that, from 2019. Another thing to note is the upcoming meetings for the rest of this year. So for the foreseeable future, due to the increase in COVID-19 cases, all meetings will be held here at Centerview. Neighbors and things like that will be notified via mail of the location change. Another thing to note that is the December 1st Planning and Zoning Commission. There will also be a Board of Zoning Adjustment meeting. There are two things to be heard at 6 p.m. that night as well. So if you have any other questions, I'm available.
Commissioner Urquilla, please.
You note that there's no current applications for December 15th. Is that still the case?
Sorry. Yes. So while we don't have any applications, we will be using the December 15th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to go over the strategic plan. So we had hopes to have everyone together, but we'll be going board by board to discuss those. So the Planning and Zoning one is in December.
Thank you. Any additional questions for staff? Okay, moving along. Now it's time for public comment. However, not seeing any here, unless there's somebody in the hallway. We will move right along to commission member comments. And I will start to my right, because you usually are the one who dishes it out. So here you go, Commissioner Faulkner.
Turnabout is fair play, thank you. Thanks to staff. I always view this as a team effort, and I could not do this without you. And thanks to Commissioner Wiggins for being willing to step up to the role of chair, and thanks to Commissioner Fizer and Commissioner Peterman for their willingness to continue in the roles. And I believe that's all I have this evening.
Thank you. I'm going to just kind of stay along this row for the moment. Commissioner Manser.
I'd like to thank the staff, thank Mr. Zer. He answered a question that I had before regarding conflict of interest. That really cleared things up. I'd also like to talk with staff about attending virtually in the December 1st meeting, if possible. I will not be in the state, but would like to take a few hours out of my evening if that's possible. Thanks.
Commissioner Peterman, or Secretary Peterman, excuse me.
Thanks to staff, and congratulations to Mr. Wiggins. Otherwise, I don't have anything else.
Commissioner Bowie.
No comments. I apologize about being late today. I went to the wrong building, actually, which was weird, but it was told to me Centerview. I don't know why I went to Recreation Park over there, but the rack over there. So that's my fault, so I apologize, but we appreciate you guys' hard work. Thank you for that explanation tonight, and a lot of good information that cleared some things up. Your explanation regarding virtual meetings versus not virtual meetings, still a little bit of gray area there. I know a strict interpretation of what's there in front of us is hard because there's a little bit of ambiguity there and there's some room for wiggle room. I would just advise that, you know, you guys maybe be thinking in those terms in case these cases of COVID continue to rise, et cetera, for some contingency plans. But other than that, no other comment. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Ackland.
Mr. Zur, I'd like to thank you for this training, very helpful. I appreciate that. Thank you, staff, for all your hard work, and like to congratulate our Mr. Wiggins and our other elected officers, and hope everybody have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Commissioner Kia.
Yeah, just kind of echo what my fellow commissioners have said in regards to, you know, city staff for your efforts, Attorney Zur for your time and training this evening. I would like to personally thank former Chair Faulkner for his time and service on the commission as our chair. I've learned a lot from you in that role. Not sure why the change, but whatever the reason, grateful for your leadership and time in that role. And congratulations, Chairman Wiggins, on your new role. And as my fellow Commissioner Ackland said, I hope everyone here has a wonderful Thanksgiving. And while I too see some ambiguity in the in-person, I am a believer that people should have the opportunity to look into the eyes of those making their decisions in person. And, you know, I think if you took that away, the discomfort of having to answer the public's cries from a distance behind a computer screen, you know, may not be the most effective way to run a city. So while I understand both sides, and while I may have made the point that I thought that we should be able to do it electronically, I do believe that in person is best when possible.
It has been a challenging determination amongst all around the state, all around the country, and absolutely open to interpretation. I understand that. This is a notion of kind of hedge and bets.
Sure. But again, appreciate your time and effort into figuring that out for us to keep us on the straight and narrow. So again, thank you, everyone.
Mayor Turnbow.
Well, I also want to thank Jerry for his many years of leadership as chair of this commission. We have seen a lot of changes here in this community over the, 18 years that you've chaired?
I think I've lost count, Mayor Turnbull.
Yeah, it's, there's been a lot of changes anyway, we can say, very positive changes to the community, and a lot of it is due to the leadership of the commissioner that led this group. I thank you, sir, for all those many years. I congratulate Commissioner Wiggins on his promotion tonight to chair of this commission, and thank the others for their willingness to continue to serve, and thank everybody here for your willingness to serve. We can't get things done without our volunteers, and I know it does take some intestinal fortitude to get up and coming up here on a Tuesday night with COVID cases going crazy. We hope we've set up a safe and clean environment for you all to be able to think through these issues clearly. But I want to thank you for that, and Jonathan, thank you again for the training tonight. Very good. I appreciate that. And that's all I have, sir.
Thank you. First, former Chair Faulkner, thank you for your service. I hope that you will endure multiple questions and opportunities for me to seek advice based on your expertise. So I hope you will endure that. Thank you to staff, Mr. Zur, for your presentation, everything that you all do. Have a wonderful, safe Thanksgiving, and please stay safe. Mask up, wash hands, sanitize when possible, and be very careful during Thanksgiving, but have a great time. Hopefully, everybody will be back here on December 1st. And if there's nothing else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chair,
Oh, excuse me. Yes, sir.
Nope.
I move we adjourn this evening's meeting.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner, former Chair Faulkner, second by Commissioner Kia and Bowie, and no, I'm just kidding. All right, to adjourn. All those in favor? Seeing everybody approves, I'll take that as a motion to adjourn. 8-0. Thank you.